Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. If you haven't already noticed, we're approximately 20% done with 2020. So I hope you've been effective with your time so far. And if not, well, it's not too late to reevaluate. I want to thank you all for joining us today here at Plug and Play's first virtual event focused on advancements in the construction sector. Today, you're going to have the opportunity to see and interact with some of the most innovative companies we've discovered across the phases of pre-construction, construction, and operations and maintenance. Now, some of you may already know who I am, but for those who don't, my name is Miles, and I lead the real estate and construction tech program here at Plug and Play, and I'm going to be today's moderator. Now, as far as today's event goes, this introduction is going to end around 9 a.m., and then we're going to hand things off to our main presenters. We'll start by looking at the pre-construction phase. We'll then move into the construction phase, which is the biggest part of today's segment. And then lastly, we'll end on operations and maintenance. Now, for those who aren't familiar with Plug and Play, I just wanted to provide a few high-level notes on who we are. Plug and Play is a global innovation platform and venture capital firm. Investments that you've probably heard of include companies like Dropbox, PayPal, and Lending Club, and Rappi as well, which does last mile delivery in South America. Now, in addition to investments, we also partner with over 400 corporations around the world. And these are corporations that you probably know, like Mercedes-Benz, DHL, Prologis, Cushman & Wakefield, and more. And essentially what we're doing with these corporations is we partner with them and strategically introduce them to technology companies. We also provide them access to other corporations, both within their industry and in other industries. And then lastly, we will work together with them to help devise an innovation strategy. Now, there's one more thought I'd like to share before moving on. This is one of my favorite quotes by Steve Jobs. And the thought we want to share is, over the past 10 years, we've worked with many corporations, and we've seen these corporations try to innovate. And I will say every corporation has their own unique approach, but there is a common theme that some of the best innovative companies tend to share. And what they seem to understand is this: Silicon Valley startups are essentially business experiments. And what we mean by that is, to be a successful company, it takes a combination of a great idea, a great team, and the right timing. And if you don't have all three of those, you may not have a good business. An example of this is back in the dot-com era. There were many ideas that back then weren't good businesses, but today are thriving businesses. Things like selling pet food online. So in keeping with that idea, these companies understand that it never makes sense to run one experiment. It's too risky. But it always makes sense to run 10 experiments. Well, why is that? Well, when you run 10 experiments, you know going in that a majority of these experiments won't pan out the way you want them to. But that's okay, because the ones that do work may work really, really well. An example of this is how Amazon approaching new markets to enter. With Prime, for example, no one on the Amazon team could point to numbers showing that giving customers free shipping for a yearly fee would ever pay for itself. And yet today, Prime and AWS are two of the pillars of Amazon. And in fact, in 2017, all of Amazon's operating income came from AWS. Let me just say that one more time. In 2017, one of these early bets was all of Amazon's operating income. So just keep that in mind. So what's the takeaway here? Maybe the question you should be asking is not whether a specific technology will work or not. The reality is that's just too hard to do. You can't predict the future. And we've seen this historically not pan out for companies. On the left, you see Steve Ballmer's famous quote about the iPhone. And on the right, you see what happened with Xerox. our suggestion based off working with all these corporations is this. Maybe the question you should be asking is, assuming the technology works, how big could it get? If you find a technology that cut costs, great. But does it cut costs by $1 million, or does it have the potential to cut costs by $1 billion? That's what these innovative companies, that's how they think about it, using this portfolio approach. Okay, with that, just a few house rules, and then we're going to pass things off to the main presenters of today. First off, number one, everyone will be muted for the entirety of the presentation, except for the startups that will be presenting. If you have a question, you'll notice at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button. If you click on that, that's where you can submit a question, and we have a full team here that's ready to get those answered for you. But don't worry, if we don't get to your question, we'll make sure to follow up with you afterwards. And lastly, each startup is going to have 5 minutes to present, and then there'll be a live Q&A section afterwards. So with that, I'm going to hand things off to the MC of our event, Kia Nejatian. Kia leads investments for the real estate and construction tech program and has been cited in publications including TechCrunch and Inc.com. So with that, Kia, please take it away.